The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute professional automotive, financial, or mechanical advice. While we discuss historical trends, reliability data, and market valuations, these factors are subject to change and individual experience may vary. Any mention of vehicle performance, maintenance, or investment potential should be viewed through the lens of historical case studies, rather than a guarantee of future results. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult with a certified mechanic or financial professional before making significant automotive purchases or investments. Imagine standing on a street corner in suburban Ohio in 1973. The air is thick with the smell of leaded gasoline and the rumble of massive cast-iron V8 engines. Suddenly, a tiny, buzzing machine rounds the corner. It looks like a toy compared to the Chevy Impalas and Ford LTDs lining the curb. People literally laugh at it. They call it a motorized toaster. They say it won't last 10,000 miles on American highways. That little car was a Honda Civic, and within a decade it wouldn't just be surviving. It would be dismantling the very foundation of the American dream. Fast forward to today, and the landscape has shifted so dramatically that it is almost unrecognizable. In the United States, the obsession with Japanese car brands like Toyota, Honda, and Subaru is no longer just a preference. It is a cultural phenomenon that dictates the flow of billions of dollars every single year. We are currently witnessing a reality where a used Toyota Tacoma with 100,000 miles on the odometer can sell for nearly its original MSRP, while domestic luxury sedans lose half their value the moment they clear the dealership lot. This isn't just about transportation anymore. This is about a deep-seated psychological trust that has been forged over 50 years of trial, error, and engineering perfectionism. We have reached a point where the Made in Japan, or Japanese engineered label acts as a shield against the rising costs of living and the volatility of the modern economy. But how did we get here? Why did the American consumer, once the most fiercely nationalistic buyer in the world, decide that their ultimate loyalty belonged to brands from across the Pacific? To understand the obsession, we have to pull back the curtain on the hidden mechanics of reliability, the secret history of the 1970s fuel crisis, and the psychological concept of the Buy It for Life movement that is currently sweeping the nation. Today, we are performing a deep dive masterclass into the specific reasons why Japanese automotive giants have effectively captured the heart and soul of the American driver. This isn't just a list of car models. We are going to solve the ultimate consumer puzzle: how to identify the hidden value in a vehicle that goes beyond the sticker price. You will learn the historical trends that led to the downfall of the Big Three's dominance, the engineering philosophies like Kaizen that make a Lexus feel new after 15 years, and the data-driven reality of resale value that can save the average household tens of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. By the time we finish this exploration, you will understand exactly why the person next to you in traffic is willing to wait 6 months for a RAV4 hybrid while domestic alternatives sit ignored on the lot. This is the blueprint of an obsession. To truly grasp the gravity of this shift, we must look at the historical case studies of the early 1970s. Before this era, American car culture was defined by planned obsolescence. The goal of Detroit was to sell you a new car every 3 years. Engines were large and powerful, but often inefficient and prone to catastrophic failure once the warranty expired. Then the 1973 oil embargo hit. Suddenly, the gas-guzzling V8s that defined American status became liabilities. This was the first major open loop in the American consumer's mind. They needed efficiency, but they were terrified of losing the utility they were used to. Enter the Japanese manufacturers. While American companies scrambled to downsize their existing platforms, brands like Toyota and Honda were already decades ahead in small engine refinement. They didn't just offer better fuel economy. They offered a level of precision engineering that seemed alien to the American market. Take, for example, the concept of the over-engineered powertrain. In the 1980s and 90s, while domestic brands were experimenting with plastic components and complex, unproven electronics to meet new regulations, Japanese engineers doubled down on simplicity and material quality. This gave birth to legends like the Toyota 22R engine and the Honda B series. These weren't just engines, they were industrial-grade tools. There are documented case studies of these power plants reaching 300,000, 400,000, and even 500,000 miles with nothing more than basic fluid changes. This created a secondary market boom that has never truly deflated. In the United States, the vehicle is often a person's second largest investment after their home. When the American consumer realized that a Japanese vehicle could potentially outlast 2 or 3 domestic counterparts, The obsession moved from a niche interest to a mainstream financial strategy. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. When a consumer buys a car, they are buying a promise of freedom. In the American context, where public transportation is often lacking, a car breakdown isn't just an inconvenience. It is a threat to one's livelihood. Japanese brands tapped into this fear and provided the antidote. This led to the development of brand tribalism. You see this most clearly with brands like Subaru. In regions like the Pacific Northwest or New England, Subaru isn't just a car brand, it's a badge of identity. It represents a specific lifestyle of outdoor exploration, backed by the reliability of symmetrical all-wheel drive. These brands stopped selling steel and rubber. They started selling peace of mind. We also have to analyze the data regarding total cost of ownership. While an American truck might have a lower entry price, the historical trends show that the Japanese counterparts, specifically the Toyota Tundra or Nissan Frontier, often hold a much higher percentage of their value over a 5-year period. This creates a cycle of wealth retention for the buyer. If you buy a vehicle for $30,000 and sell it 5 years later for $20,000, your cost of ownership is significantly lower than if you bought a competing model for $25,000 and could only sell it for $8,000. This financial literacy among American buyers has matured over the last 2 decades, fueled by the internet and the transparency of secondary market data. The obsession is, at its core, a rational response to economic pressure. But the story goes deeper than just money and oil. It's about the philosophy of manufacturing. The Japanese concept of genchi genbutsu, which translates to go and see, meant that engineers would spend time in the US, watching how Americans actually use their cars. They saw that we commute long distances on high-speed freeways, we eat in our cars, and we treat our vehicles as mobile offices. They took these observations back to Japan and designed interiors that were more ergonomic and durable than anything coming out of Detroit at the time. They realized that the cup holder wasn't a luxury. For an American commuter, it was a necessity. By obsessing over the small details of the American user experience, they made themselves indispensable. As we move forward in this deep dive, we will examine the specific engineering breakthroughs that allowed these brands to leapfrog the competition, the marketing genius that rebranded small as smart, and the current state of the market where Japanese brands are navigating the transition to electrification. This is the beginning of a journey into why the American driveway looks the way it does today, and why the sun likely won't set on Japanese automotive dominance anytime soon. The obsession is real, it is calculated, and it is backed by half a century of unmatched consistency. We are just scratching the surface of the technical and cultural reasons why these machines have become the backbone of American mobility. To understand how this obsession became hardwired into the American psyche, we have to look at the legendary 1:100 rule of Japanese manufacturing. Imagine a technician named David in 2026, working at a manufacturing plant in Kentucky. He is looking at a specific bolt on a Toyota Camry suspension assembly. In many traditional manufacturing environments, a defect is caught at the end of the line, or worse, by the customer. But under the philosophy of Jidoka, the machine or the operator stops the entire line the moment a single abnormality is detected. This prevents the compounding of errors. Historical trends show that this obsession with the micro-level detail results in a macro-level reliability that American consumers have come to rely on as a form of financial insurance. When the average price of a new vehicle in 2026 hovers around $48,000, the American buyer is no longer looking for a status symbol that spends 3 weeks a year in the shop. They are looking for an appliance that performs with the clinical precision of a Swiss watch. Consider the case study of the Toyota Production System, or TPS. This isn't just a way to build cars. It is a psychological contract with the consumer. In the late 20th century, American automakers were focused on economies of scale, building as many units as possible to lower the cost per unit. This often led to a quantity over quality bottleneck. Japanese brands, however, pioneered lean manufacturing. By reducing waste and focusing on just-in-time production, they ensured that every component was fresh, inspected, and necessary. For an American driver like Sarah in Seattle, this translates to a vehicle that doesn't develop mysterious rattles at the 30,000-mile mark. It means that when she turns the key, or presses the start button, on a damp Tuesday morning in 2026, the potential outcomes are skewed heavily in favor of a successful ignition. But there is a deeper layer to this obsession: the 1990s golden era. This was the decade where Japanese brands didn't just compete on reliability, they began to dominate on soul and performance. Imagine the impact of the Acura NSX. When it arrived, it sent shockwaves through the exotic car world. It provided Ferrari-level performance with the daily driver reliability of a Honda Civic. It proved to the American public that you didn't have to be a billionaire or a master mechanic to own a high-performance machine. This era birthed the legendary 2JZ engine found in the Toyota Supra and the RB26 in the Nissan Skyline. These engines were over-engineered to such an extent that they could handle double or triple their factory horsepower with stock internal components. This created a cult-like following among American tuners and enthusiasts. They realized that Japanese engineering wasn't just safe. It was a canvas for limitless potential. Data from the secondary market in 2026 confirms that this era created a massive ripple effect in modern car culture. The resale value of a clean 1990s Japanese sports car often exceeds that of its contemporary European or American rivals. This isn't just nostalgia. It is a recognition of the inherent material quality. When we talk about why Americans are obsessed, we have to talk about the concept of the bulletproof engine. In the 2020s, as engines become more complex with turbochargers, hybrid batteries, and direct injection, the fear of expensive repairs has grown exponentially. The American consumer looks at the historical trends of the Honda K-Series or the Mazda Skyactiv engines and sees a safe harbor. These engines are designed with a specific thermal efficiency that minimizes wear on internal components, extending the life of the vehicle well beyond the typical loan period. Let's look at another case study, the Subaru phenomenon. In 2026, Subaru maintains one of the highest brand loyalty ratings in the United States. Why? Because they solved a specific American problem, the fear of the elements. By making symmetrical all-wheel drive standard across almost their entire lineup, they removed the decision-making stress for buyers in the snow belt. A family in Denver doesn't just buy a Subaru Outback, they buy the ability to ignore the weather forecast. This specialized engineering, combined with the Boxer engine's low center of gravity, created a unique driving dynamic that felt safer and more planted than the top-heavy domestic SUVs of the early 2000s. The obsession here is rooted in the feeling of invincibility. Furthermore, the Japanese approach to luxury redefined the American dream. Before the launch of Lexus in 1989, luxury meant chrome, soft suspension, and frequent visits to the dealership for electrical gremlins. Toyota spent over $1 billion in years of research to create the LS400. They didn't just want to build a luxury car. They wanted to build the quietest, smoothest, and most reliable machine on the planet. They famously stacked a pyramid of champagne glasses on the hood of an LS400, while it was running on a dynamometer at over 100 miles per hour. The glasses didn't move. This visual demonstration of vibration-free engineering shattered the American perception of what a car could be. Today, in 2026, a high-mileage Lexus is often viewed as a more sensible purchase than a brand-new entry-level car from a less reputable brand. The obsession also stems from the transparency of the Japanese dealership experience compared to historical domestic models. By the mid-2020s, the data showed that brands like Toyota and Honda were leading the way in digital retail integration, making the buying process less adversarial. But the real hook is the maintenance. Japanese engineering often prioritizes ease of service. For the American DIY enthusiast or even the local independent mechanic, these cars are logical. Bolts are where you expect them to be. Parts are standardized across multiple models, which keeps the cost of replacement components low. In an era of high inflation and rising labor rates, the ability to maintain a vehicle without needing specialized, proprietary tools is a massive competitive advantage. Imagine if every time you bought a piece of technology, it actually got better with age because the community around it grew so large that every possible issue had a documented fix online. That is the reality of owning a Japanese car in America in 2026. The forums, the YouTube tutorials, and the massive aftermarket support mean that an owner is never truly alone. This ecosystem of support feeds the obsession. It turns a car into a hobby and a community. When you buy a Tacoma, you aren't just buying a truck. You are joining a global network of explorers who have already stress-tested every nut and bolt of that platform. However, as we look toward the future, a new question arises. The landscape of the American road is changing. Electric vehicles and software-defined platforms are the new frontier. For decades, the Japanese obsession was built on internal combustion perfection. But what happens when the engine, the very heart of the obsession, is replaced by a battery and a motor? Are these brands moving too slowly, or are they once again playing the long game, waiting for the technology to mature before they apply their signature reliability? The stakes have never been higher. As we move into the next phase of this deep dive, we have to look at the controversial laggard reputation some Japanese brands have earned in the EV space. Is it a massive strategic blunder? Or is it a calculated move to protect their reputation for durability? And more importantly, there is one specific Japanese brand that is currently quietly overtaking the others in a segment you would never expect. It's a brand that was almost left for dead a decade ago. But in 2026, it is becoming the secret weapon for the most cost-conscious American families. To understand who they are and how they did it, we have to look at the secret architecture of their newest platforms. If you think you know which brand is the king of the American road, you might be surprised by the data we are about to reveal. The shift is happening right now, under the hood of the cars you see every single day. To identify this hidden king of the 2026 American automotive landscape, we must look at the data surrounding Mazda. For decades, Mazda was the underdog, the Zoom Zoom brand that enthusiasts loved, but the general public often overlooked in favor of the sheer volume of Toyota or the household name of Honda. However, a major shift occurred in the early 2020s that has reached its peak here in 2026. Mazda didn't just decide to make better cars. They decided to pivot toward a concept called Mazda Premium. Imagine a buyer named Marcus in 2026. Marcus is a middle manager in Chicago who wants the interior quality of an Audi or a BMW. But he has seen the historical trends of repair costs for European luxury vehicles once they cross the 50,000-mile mark. He knows that a simple oil leak in a German sedan can result in a 4-digit repair bill. Marcus represents a massive segment of the US population that is currently obsessed with Mazda's latest large architecture platform. This shift wasn't accidental. Mazda looked at the market and saw a void. Toyota and Honda had moved so far into the mainstream that their interiors, while durable, often felt utilitarian and plastic-heavy. On the other end, luxury brands were becoming prohibitively expensive to maintain. Mazda stepped into the middle, offering Japanese reliability with near-luxury craftsmanship. The case study of the Mazda CX-90 and its evolution into the 2026 models is a masterclass in this strategy. They introduced an inline-six engine, a configuration typically reserved for high-end brands like BMW and Mercedes-Benz, and paired it with a rear-biased all-wheel drive system. But unlike the European counterparts, Mazda utilized their historical expertise in Skyactiv technology to ensure that these complex machines remained accessible and reliable. For Marcus, the potential outcomes are clear. He gets the prestige and driving dynamics of a luxury vehicle with the maintenance schedule and part availability of a mass-market Japanese brand. This is the secret weapon of the modern American car buyer. The obsession with Mazda in 2026 is driven by the realization that value isn't just about the lowest price. It is about the highest quality-to-cost ratio. When you sit inside a 2026 Mazda, you aren't greeted by the massive, distracting tablets that have become standard in many American and Chinese-made vehicles. Instead, you find tactile knobs, real leather, and a focus on Jinba Tai, the feeling of the horse and rider as one. This philosophy has resonated with an American public that is increasingly fatigued by overcomplicated technology. The data shows that while other brands are struggling with software glitches and touchscreen failures, Mazda's focused, driver-centric approach has led to some of the highest consumer satisfaction scores in the industry. But we cannot talk about the American obsession with Japanese brands without addressing the elephant in the room: the Toyota Tacoma and the culture of the indestructible truck. Imagine if you could buy a tool in 2026 that you could use every single day for a decade and then sell it for 80% of what you paid. That isn't a fantasy. It is a historical case study of the Tacoma's resale value. In regions like Southern California or the mountains of Colorado, the Tacoma is more than a vehicle. It is a currency. This obsession is rooted in the platform's ability to withstand extreme abuse. We have seen historical trends where these trucks are driven through salt-heavy winters, used as workhorses on construction sites, and taken on grueling off-road trails, only to emerge with nothing more than a few scratches. The secret to this longevity lies in the frame and the cooling systems. Japanese engineers realized early on that American trucks are often overloaded and under-maintained. To combat this, they over-engineered the heat dissipation in their transmissions and used high-tensile steel in areas where domestic competitors were moving toward lighter, thinner materials for fuel economy. In 2026, as the cost of new trucks continues to climb, the American obsession with the Toyota Hilux's cousin, the Tacoma, has reached a fever pitch. People are willing to pay a premium because they view the vehicle as a hedge against future economic instability. If the economy takes a downturn, you still have a vehicle that will run forever and hold its value. However, there is a technical detail that many people miss when analyzing why these brands dominate. It is the concept of the global platform. Companies like Honda and Toyota design their core architectures to work in every environment on Earth, from the deserts of Australia to the jungles of Southeast Asia. When a car is designed to survive the most hostile environments on the planet, an American suburb is a vacation for it. This global testing means that by the time a Honda CR-V reaches a dealership in suburban Virginia in 2026, it has already been subjected to millions of miles of testing, in conditions far worse than anything the average American driver will ever encounter. This leads us to the psychological phenomenon of the invisible car. For a large portion of the US population, the ultimate luxury is a car they never have to think about. They don't want to know the name of their service advisor. They don't want to know the difference between a timing belt and a timing chain. They just want to go to work, pick up the kids, and go to the grocery store. This is where the obsession with the Toyota Corolla and Camry becomes apparent. These vehicles are the silent backbone of the American middle class. In 2026, the data indicates that the average age of a car on American roads has reached an all-time high of over 12 years. People are holding on to their cars longer than ever before. And when you plan to keep a machine for over a decade, your brand choice becomes a long-term life decision. Imagine a scenario where a family in 2026 is choosing between a flashy new startup EV and a Toyota RAV4 hybrid. The startup EV offers 0 to 60 times that rival supercars and a giant screen that can play movies. The RAV4 hybrid offers a proven planetary gear transmission and a battery system that has been refined over 4 generations of the Prius. While the startup might win the cool factor for the first 6 months, the historical trend suggests that the RAV4 will still be on the road in 2040, whereas the startup company might not even exist anymore. This realization has led to a massive surge in what we call rational obsession. It is a deep-seated respect for the boring, the consistent, and the reliable. We also have to look at the role of the Japanese luxury arm, Acura. In 2026, Acura has reclaimed its spot as the thinking person's luxury brand. By focusing on SHAWD super handling all-wheel drive, they offered a technical solution to torque, steer, and handling that didn't require the stiff, uncomfortable suspension of many European sports sedans. For an American driver, this means they can have a car that feels agile on a winding back road, but remains comfortable on a pothole-ridden highway in Detroit. The technical precision of the torque vectoring rear differential in an Acura MDX is a case study in how Japanese brands use mechanical hardware to solve problems that others try to fix with software. As we continue this masterclass, we have to address the growing tension between these legacy giants and the new era of automotive technology. There is a specific reason why Toyota's CEO was once considered a skeptic of the all-electric future, and why that skepticism is now being viewed by some as a prophetic business move that saved the company billions. But there is another player we haven't discussed yet, a brand that is currently dominating the subcompact market in a way that is making the big three in Detroit very nervous. It is a brand that built its entire reputation on a single type of engine, and in 2026, that engine is undergoing a radical transformation that could change everything we know about fuel efficiency. What is this mystery engine technology, and why is it causing a massive spike in trade-in values for one specific Japanese brand? And how did a simple change in the way a piston moves create a vehicle that can travel nearly 1,000 miles on a single tank without being a plug-in hybrid? The answer lies in a technical breakthrough that was once thought to be impossible. To see how this innovation is fueling the next wave of American obsession, we have to look closer at the internal combustion engine's final greatest act. The next chapter of this story involves a mechanical secret that the rest of the world is still trying to decode. In 2026, the American automotive landscape is being rocked by a development that many critics claimed was impossible: the rebirth of the internal combustion engine. While the rest of the world seemed to pivot exclusively toward battery electric vehicles, a triumvirate of Japanese giants, Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru, quietly spent the last 3 years engineering a mechanical counter-revolution. This is the secret architecture that is currently driving a massive spike in trade-in values for older models, as consumers scramble to get their hands on what is being called the 1,000-mile engine. Imagine a driver named James in 2026, living in rural Texas. For James, an electric vehicle with a 300-mile range is a logistical nightmare. He needs to haul equipment, deal with extreme heat that drains batteries, and often drives 500 miles in a single weekend without seeing a reliable high-speed charger. James is the primary reason why the Japanese obsession has entered a new, more intense phase. He just traded in his 5-year-old domestic truck for a vehicle equipped with Toyota's new 1.5-liter ultra-efficient engine. On the surface, a 1.5-liter engine sounds small, almost inadequate for the American road. But the technical reality is a masterclass in thermal dynamics. This new generation of engines, which hit the US market in full force in early 2026, is the result of a joint commitment to carbon-neutral fuels and radical downsizing. Historically, engines were designed to be the primary source of power. In this new 2026 architecture, the engine has been reimagined as a compact, high-efficiency power plant designed specifically to work in a hybrid ecosystem. Toyota's new 1.5-liter and 2.0-liter engines are roughly 20% smaller in volume than their predecessors, but they produce more effective power per cubic centimeter than almost anything we have seen in the last 50 years. By reducing the physical size of the engine, Japanese engineers were able to lower the hood lines of cars and SUVs, drastically improving aerodynamics and further boosting fuel efficiency. But the real mechanical secret, the one that has James and millions of other Americans obsessed, is the integration of these engines with what Mazda calls the rotary EV system. Mazda, a brand that refused to let the rotary engine die, has successfully repurposed it as a range extender. In this 2026 setup, the rotary engine doesn't drive the wheels directly. Instead, it sits in a state of constant, optimized RPM, acting as a generator to feed a high-density battery. This solves the primary weakness of the rotary engine, its historical fuel thirst, and turns its primary strength, its incredible power-to-weight ratio, into a range-extending weapon. Case studies from early 2026 testers show that these vehicles are achieving total ranges nearing 1,000 miles on a single tank of fuel. This isn't just a marginal improvement. It is a total disruption of the range anxiety narrative that has slowed EV adoption in the United States. Furthermore, we have to look at the breakthrough in ammonia-powered internal combustion. In late 2025 and into 2026, Toyota Industries unveiled an engine that can run on ammonia as a single fuel. This is a massive shift. Ammonia contains no carbon, meaning it emits zero CO2 during combustion. While the infrastructure for ammonia is still in its infancy, the fact that a Japanese manufacturer has a working, reliable engine capable of using a non-fossil fuel that is already widely produced for the agricultural industry has sent shockwaves through the American heartland. For a farmer in the Midwest, the potential outcomes are revolutionary. The ability to power their fleet with the same chemicals they use to fertilize their fields, all while maintaining the mechanical reliability of a traditional Japanese engine. Subaru's contribution to this 2026 alliance is equally critical. They have successfully integrated their legendary symmetrical all-wheel drive with a new transaxle that houses a high-output electric motor. This isn't the sluggish hybrid system of the 2010s. This is a system where the internal combustion engine and the electric motor are so perfectly synchronized that the transition is imperceptible to the driver. Historical trends in the US show that once a consumer experiences the instant torque of an electric motor paired with the endless range of a gas engine, they rarely go back to a traditional powertrain. Why does this create an obsession? Because it addresses the fundamental American desire for self-reliance. In 2026, as the power grid in various parts of the US faces increasing strain from the shift toward electrification, the idea of a vehicle that can generate its own power using highly efficient, potentially carbon-neutral fuels is the ultimate security blanket. The American obsession is no longer just about the car. It is about the energy independence the car provides. Data from 2026 Consumer Reports indicates that the resale value for these next-gen Japanese hybrids is projected to stay significantly higher than pure internal combustion or pure electric rivals. This is because these vehicles represent the best of both worlds, a hedge against rising electricity costs and a shield against volatile gasoline prices. This is the final greatest act of the internal combustion engine. It isn't dying. It is being perfected by Japanese engineers who refuse to follow the herd. However, there is a hidden cost to this perfection. To achieve these levels of efficiency, these engines utilize exotic materials and manufacturing tolerances that were previously reserved for aerospace engineering. This has created a new dilemma in the American market: the rise of the supermechanic. As these cars become more advanced, the gap between a standard repair shop and a specialized Japanese certified facility is widening. This leads to a fascinating new trend where certain US zip codes with high concentrations of these specialized mechanics are seeing a corresponding rise in property values. But even with all this technology, there is one brand that is taking a completely different path. While Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru are refining the engine, this other manufacturer is focusing on the one thing that most Americans still hate about modern cars: the screens. In 2026, this brand is launching a cabin experience that uses no glass screens at all, utilizing a technology that interacts directly with the driver's field of vision. It is a bold, risky move that is either the future of driving or a massive distraction. How did this brand manage to convince the safety-obsessed American public that no screens is actually safer? And why are their pre-orders currently outstripping even the most popular Japanese SUVs? To understand this next shift in the obsession, we have to look at the psychology of the digital detox movement and how it is being integrated into the next generation of Japanese luxury. The answer involves a technology originally developed for fighter pilots, now being installed in family minivans. If you think the current infotainment wars are over, you haven't seen what happens when the screen disappears entirely. The manufacturer leading this radical charge against digital clutter is Honda, specifically through its 2026 Acura lineup and the new generation of the Odyssey minivan. For years, the American consumer has been locked in a screen-size arms race. We saw dashboards turn into giant, glowing tablets that required multiple submenus just to adjust the air conditioning. But in 2026, a significant portion of the US public has reached a breaking point with what psychologists call cognitive load. Imagine a mother named Elena in 2026, driving through a torrential downpour in Atlanta. She has 3 children in the back of her Acura MDX. In a traditional 2024 vehicle, Elena would have to glance away from the road at a bright screen to check her navigation or change the temperature, a move that takes her eyes off the pavement for an average of 2 seconds. At 60 miles per hour, that is like driving the length of 2 basketball courts blindfolded. Honda's solution, which has sparked a new wave of obsession, is the Panoramic Augmented Reality Interface, or PARI. Instead of a physical screen mounted on the dashboard, the entire lower portion of the windshield acts as a transparent display. This technology, derived from the head-up displays used in the F-35 Lightning II fighter jet, projects critical information so that it appears to be floating 50 feet in front of the vehicle. For Elena, her navigation arrows aren't on a map to her right. They are glowing blue markers painted directly onto the actual road surface through the windshield. This isn't just a gimmick. It is a fundamental shift in safety and ergonomics. Historical trends show that when technology reduces the physical effort required to perform a task, adoption rates skyrocket. By removing the need to look away from the road, Honda has tapped into the primary American obsession of 2026, the desire for high-tech features without the high-stress distractions. To understand the depth of this obsession, we have to look at the case study of the 2026 Honda Odyssey. Minivans have historically been seen as utilitarian boxes, but Honda has transformed the Odyssey into a sensory deprivation chamber. They realized that the modern American family is overstimulated. The 2026 model features what they call cognitive quiet zones. Using the same sophisticated noise-canceling technology found in high-end aviation headsets, the vehicle's audio system emits out-of-phase sound waves that effectively neutralize road noise, wind whistle, and even the high-pitched hum of the electric motors. Data from 2026 consumer clinics indicates that drivers feel 15% less fatigued after a 2-hour commute in these environments compared to traditional cabins. This focus on the human biological response to the machine is the new frontier of Japanese engineering. But the obsession doesn't stop at the windshield. We have to discuss the mechanical breakthrough of the variable compression turbocharged engine, a technology that Nissan and Infiniti have spent billions perfecting and have finally stabilized for the mass market in 2026. Imagine an engine that can physically change its internal geometry while you are driving. When you are cruising on a flat highway in Kansas, the engine increases its compression ratio to maximize fuel efficiency, acting like a lean-burning economy car. The moment you step on the gas to pass a slow-moving truck, the engine instantly lowers its compression ratio to allow for massive turbocharger boost without the risk of engine knock. This is the holy grail of internal combustion. In the 2026 Infiniti QX60, this technology has created a potential outcome where a 3-row SUV can achieve the fuel economy of a compact sedan without sacrificing the towing capacity required by American boat and trailer owners. This mechanical shapeshifting is a perfect example of why Americans are obsessed with Japanese brands. While domestic manufacturers often rely on larger displacement or simply adding more gears to the transmission, The Japanese approach is to fundamentally re-engineer the physics of the combustion cycle itself. This creates a level of versatility that is highly prized in a country with as much geographical diversity as the United States. Furthermore, we must analyze the shift in the American perception of value. In 2026, the term luxury is being replaced by the term durability plus. The American buyer is no longer impressed by a badge if the interior materials start to peel or fade after 3 years in the Florida sun. This is where the Japanese obsession with material science comes into play. Consider the case study of Mazda's 2026 interior textiles. They have moved away from traditional leathers and toward a new synthetic material called bio-suede, which is made from recycled ocean plastics, but engineered at a molecular level to be more resistant to UV damage and liquid stains than any natural hide. For a pet owner or a parent in 2026, the obsession isn't about the status of the material. It's about the fact that the car looks brand new after 5 years of hard use. This brings us to the concept of the 20-year car. Historical trends in the US used to favor a 3 to 5 year lease cycle. However, in 2026, with the rising costs of insurance and registration, a new movement has emerged: the long-haul ownership strategy. Americans are looking for vehicles they can legitimately keep for 2 decades. Japanese manufacturers have leaned into this by making their 2026 software architectures open source for certified independent mechanics. This means that even 20 years from now, a mechanic in a small town in Wyoming will be able to plug into a Toyota or a Honda and diagnose a software glitch without needing a proprietary multi-thousand-dollar factory scan tool. This transparency is building a level of brand trust that is unprecedented in the automotive industry. The obsession is also being fueled by the Japanese mastery of the hybrid electric transition. While some brands went all in on electric and suffered when charging infrastructure failed to keep pace with sales, Japanese brands like Toyota and Honda maintained a diversified portfolio. In 2026, the data shows that the most searched vehicle type in the US is the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, PHEV, with over 80 miles of pure electric range. By hitting this specific 80-mile mark, Japanese engineers have identified the sweet spot for the American commuter. It allows for a full day of driving on electricity for 95% of the population, but retains the gasoline engine for the quintessential American road trip. Imagine the peace of mind of a driver named David in 2026, who lives in a suburban area where winter storms often knock out the power grid for days. Because his Toyota Prius Prime has a bidirectional charging system, he can use his car to power his refrigerator and home lighting system during a blackout. His car isn't just a mode of transport, it's a mobile power station and a survival tool. This multifunctional utility is a core pillar of the current obsession. The car has become an extension of the home's infrastructure. But as we look deeper into this 2026 reality, we find a growing mystery in the enthusiast community. There is a specific Japanese performance brand that has been silent for years, skipping the EV craze and the hybrid transition almost entirely. Rumors are circulating among US dealerships that this brand is about to unveil a platform that doesn't use gasoline, electricity, or ammonia. They are whispering about a solid-state hydrogen injection system that could provide the sound and soul of a high-revving sports car with zero emissions. Who is this silent giant, and why have they waited until 2026 to reveal their hand? The answer lies in a secret testing facility near Mount Fuji, where a legendary nameplate is being resurrected to challenge everything we think we know about the future of speed. If this new technology works, it won't just be an obsession. It will be a total reset of the global automotive hierarchy. To understand the gravity of what is coming, we have to look at the one brand that has always prioritized the driver's heartbeat over the boardroom's bottom line. The next part of our masterclass will reveal the return of a legend that might just save the manual transmission from extinction. The silent giant currently capturing the imagination of the American enthusiast in 2026 is Toyota, specifically through its Gazoo racing division, but with a twist that no one saw coming 3 years ago. While the industry was racing toward a future of autonomous pods, Toyota quietly filed patents for something that seemed like a contradiction in terms: a simulated manual transmission for high-performance electric and hydrogen vehicles. Imagine a driver named Leo in 2026, living in the winding hills of North Carolina. Leo grew up on the mechanical feel of a gated shifter, the rhythmic dance of the clutch, and the precise control of engine braking. For him, the silence of a standard electric vehicle is a loss of soul. He represents the core of the American performance obsession, a demographic that values the visceral connection between man and machine over raw 0 to 60 statistics. Toyota's masterstroke in 2026 was the realization that software could be used to preserve tradition rather than erase it. This isn't just a plastic lever that moves back and forth. This is a complex haptic system integrated into the vehicle's drive units. When Leo shifts from second to third in the 2026 GR Celica, the software momentarily interrupts the torque delivery of the motors, simulating the inertia of a physical gear change. The speakers and chassis actuators provide a precise mechanical thrum that mimics the vibration of a rev-matching downshift. Historical trends in the U.S. automotive market suggest that when enthusiasts feel a brand is listening to their emotional needs, brand loyalty becomes unshakable. This technical case study proves that the obsession with Japanese brands isn't just about utility. It is about the preservation of the joy of driving in a digital age. But the real technical marvel in 2026 is the hydrogen combustion engine. Unlike fuel cells which turn hydrogen into electricity to power a motor, Toyota and Yamaha have perfected a V8 engine that burns liquid hydrogen directly in its cylinders. This is the return of the legend. In late 2025, they showcased a prototype that retained the high-pitched scream of a naturally aspirated engine while emitting nothing but water vapor. For the American consumer, this is the ultimate potential outcome. A carbon-neutral future that doesn't require giving up the sound and fury of the internal combustion experience. The data from 2026 pre-orders for this limited-run technology suggests that the American public is willing to pay a significant premium for heritage-based innovation. To understand why this creates such a deep obsession, we have to look at the psychological concept of the halo effect. When a brand like Toyota or Honda builds a world-class sports car, it validates the engineering of their entire fleet. If a 2026 Supra can handle the thermal stress of a hydrogen combustion cycle at 9,000 RPM, the American buyer feels a subconscious confidence that their Corolla Hybrid can handle a 3-hour commute in a heat wave. This top-down engineering philosophy is a hallmark of Japanese industrial strategy. They don't just build a sports car as a marketing tool. They build it as a laboratory for technologies that eventually trickle down to the family SUV. Consider the case study of the 2026 Nissan Z Nismo. While domestic manufacturers have largely moved away from the affordable rear-wheel drive coupe, Nissan doubled down on the Z platform. They recognized that in the US, the car is often the only place where a person has true autonomy and privacy. By focusing on mechanical feedback, the weight of the steering, the bite of the brakes, and the visibility out of the cockpit, Nissan has maintained its cult status among American buyers who refuse to be treated like passengers in their own lives. This focus on the human-centric cockpit is a recurring theme in why these brands dominate the hearts of US drivers. However, the obsession goes beyond performance. In 2026, we are seeing a massive surge in the overlanding community. This is where the Japanese obsession with durability meets the American desire for exploration. Imagine a traveler named Chloe in 2026, who spent $40,000 outfitting her Lexus GX 550 for a 6-month trek across the Mojave Desert. For Chloe, the potential outcomes of a mechanical failure are not just an inconvenience. They are life-threatening. She chose the Lexus because of the historical data regarding the durability of its kinetic dynamic suspension system and its box steel frame. In the US, the luxury SUV market has split into two factions: those who want a status symbol for the city, and those who want a fortress for the wilderness. Japanese brands have effectively captured both, but their dominance in the fortress category is what fuels the deepest obsession. The 2026 data shows that the resale value of these ruggedized Japanese SUVs is actually rising in some regions, even as they age. This is due to a phenomenon called the mechanical floor. Because these vehicles are built on heavy-duty, truck-based architectures, they never reach a point of zero value. There is always a buyer in the US looking for a solid frame and a reliable 4-wheel drive system to build their next project. This creates a secondary market ecosystem that supports the brand long after the first owner has moved on. Why does this matter for the average viewer today? Because it highlights a fundamental truth about the Japanese manufacturing mindset. They build for the third owner, not just the first. When an engineer in Nagoya is designing a wiring harness for a 2026 Honda CR-V, they aren't just thinking about how it will perform during the 3-year warranty period. They are looking at how the insulation will hold up after 15 years of salt exposure in the Northeast. This long-term thinking is the invisible thread that connects the 1970s Civic to the 2026 hydrogen-powered sports car. But as we peel back the layers of this obsession, we find a growing friction point. As these vehicles become more technologically advanced, the price of entry is rising. In 2026, the average cost of a Japanese-branded vehicle in the US has crossed the $50,000 mark for the first time. This has opened a door for a new type of competitor, not from Europe or Detroit, but from within the Japanese alliance itself. There is a specific sub-brand that is currently dominating the entry-level market by doing the one thing no one else thought of. They are removing the technology. In a world obsessed with AI and connectivity, this brand is winning by selling simplicity. They are targeting the Gen Z buyer in America who is tired of being tracked, tired of subscriptions, and tired of expensive repairs. This brand has created a 2026 model that has no GPS, no cellular connection, and a physical key. And it is currently the fastest-selling vehicle in its segment. Who is this brand, and how did they convince the most tech-savvy generation in history to buy a car that is essentially a time machine to the year 1995? And what does this tell us about the future of the American automotive obsession? To understand this counterintuitive success story, we have to look at the secret project known as the Analog Initiative. The answer involves a return to basics that is so radical, it's actually the most high-tech thing on the road today. If you think you need a screen to be happy in 2026, you haven't seen what happens when you turn it all off and just drive. The brand currently defying the 2026 industry standard for digital complexity is Mitsubishi. While the nameplate might have spent the early 2020s in the shadow of giants like Toyota and Honda, Mitsubishi has executed a brilliant strategic retreat to the basics that is now paying massive dividends in the United States. They have identified a growing segment of the American population, particularly among Gen Z and cost-conscious rural families, that is suffering from what sociologists call high-tech fatigue. Imagine a young buyer named Taylor in 2026, living in a college town in Ohio. Taylor doesn't want a car that requires a subscription to activate the heated seats, nor does she want a dashboard that looks like a miniature version of Times Square. She wants a machine that is predictable, affordable, and, most importantly, analog. This is where the Analog Initiative comes into play. Mitsubishi's 2026 lineup, specifically the return of a simplified, entry-level Mirage and a base-trim Outlander Sport, has intentionally stripped away the overcomplicated electronics that drive up repair costs and insurance premiums. In a 2026 market where the average new car price has ballooned, Mitsubishi is offering something radical. A vehicle with physical dials, a traditional key-start ignition, and a mechanical handbrake. To the tech-obsessed, this looks like a step backward. But to Taylor and millions of others, it is the ultimate potential outcome of modern consumerism. A return to ownership without the tether of a data plan. Data from 2026 trade-in reports shows that these simplified Japanese models are holding their value remarkably well. Why? Because in the secondary market, a 10-year-old car with a complex, integrated touchscreen is often a liability. When the screen dies, the car becomes nearly undrivable, and the repair can cost more than the vehicle's worth. By sticking to a 1990s-style cockpit layout, but utilizing 2026 grade materials and safety structures, Mitsubishi has created a vehicle that is built to be a 15-year asset. This is the definition of a hidden gold mine. Historically, when the economy tightens, the American public moves away from luxury and toward utility. Case studies of the 2008 and 2020 economic shifts prove that brands offering the lowest barrier to entry and the simplest maintenance path always emerge as the survivors. But we can't talk about Japanese car brands in 2026 without mentioning the legendary JDM 25-year rule. This is a massive subculture that has officially gone mainstream in the US. In 2026, a whole new era of Japanese icons has become legal to import. We are talking about the 2001 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 7, the Honda Integra Type R DC5, and the facelift Honda NSX. These aren't just old cars. They are the physical manifestation of why Americans are obsessed with this engineering. Imagine an enthusiast named Jordan in 2026, who just spent $40,000 to import a 2001 Evo 7. To a casual observer, Jordan just bought a 25-year-old sedan. But to the community, he bought a rally-bred masterpiece that is more engaging to drive than 90% of the new cars on the lot in 2026. This import boom is creating a halo effect for modern Japanese brands. When a teenager sees a 25-year-old Honda Integra screaming at 8,500 revolutions per minute on a local track, it reinforces the brand's reputation for mechanical durability and high-performance DNA. This is a form of organic marketing that domestic and European brands simply cannot replicate. The historical trends show that the Japanese domestic market of the late 90s and early 2000s produced some of the most over-engineered vehicles in history. As these vehicles flood into the US in 2026, they are resetting the standard for what a driver should expect from a car's longevity. Furthermore, we must analyze the shift in the American minivan market. In 2026, the Toyota Sienna has become the ultimate status symbol for the suburban family, not because of its speed, but because of its hybrid-only drivetrain and available all-wheel drive. While domestic minivans have largely abandoned the segment, Toyota and Honda have leaned in, turning these vehicles into high-tech lounges. The 2026 Sienna features a built-in vacuum, a refrigerator, and an infotainment system that allows the kids in the back to play cloud-based games, while the parents enjoy a massage seat-equipped front cabin. The obsession here is about the car as a sanctuary. In an increasingly chaotic world, the Japanese minivan has become the American family's mobile command center. But let's get technical for a moment. Why do these cars actually last longer? In 2026, we have the benefit of long-term data on things like CVT, continuously variable transmission evolution. Early CVTs from the 2010s were often a point of failure, but Japanese engineers, specifically at Subaru and Toyota, refined the metallurgy and the software to the point where a 2026 CVT is often more reliable than a traditional geared automatic. They utilized high-strength steel belts and advanced thermal management systems to prevent the overheating issues that plagued earlier models. This willingness to iterate and perfect a technology over decades, rather than abandoning it for the next shiny object, is a core reason for the American obsession. Consider the scenario of a 2026 Lexus LX 600. It is a vehicle that costs over $100,000, yet it is built on a platform designed to last 25 years in the harshest conditions of the Australian outback. For the wealthy American buyer, this is the ultimate hedge. They are buying a luxury vehicle that won't be a paperweight once the lease is up. They are buying into a legacy of quality, durability, and reliability, the famous QDR that Toyota has preached for generations. However, as we look toward the final chapters of this masterclass, there is a new conflict emerging on the horizon. A specific Japanese brand is currently under fire from environmental groups for their refusal to stop building high-performance gasoline engines. But while the critics are loud, the sales numbers tell a different story. In 2026, this brand's newest sports car has a waiting list that stretches into 2028. It turns out that the American obsession with Japanese cars isn't just about saving money or staying safe. It's about a deep primal love for the sound of a well-tuned engine. What is this controversial brand? And why are they doubling down on gasoline when the rest of the world is moving on? The answer involves a secret partnership with an American oil giant to develop a synthetic fuel that could make gasoline engines cleaner than electric ones. If they succeed, it won't just be a win for the brand. It will be a win for every driver who isn't ready to let go of the past. To understand this move, we have to look at the secret chemistry happening behind the scenes in 2026. The future of the Japanese car in America might not be electric after all. It might be something much more explosive. The brand taking this massive gamble in 2026 is Mazda, in collaboration with a secret coalition of Toyota and Subaru, along with a significant partnership with ExxonMobil. This initiative is centered around the commercialization of e-fuels or synthetic gasoline. For the average American observer, the year 2026 was supposed to be the tipping point where every driveway had a charging port. However, a case study of the current U.S. electrical grid reveals that the infrastructure in Middle America has struggled to keep up with the peak demand of rapid electrification. This has created a perfect storm for a Japanese-led alternative. Imagine a driver named Robert in 2026, living in a rural part of Tennessee. Robert loves the idea of environmental responsibility, but he owns a vintage 1990s Mazda RX-7 and a modern CX-90. He doesn't want to scrap his beloved rotary engine for a battery pack that weighs 1,000 pounds. The secret chemistry happening behind the scenes involves the synthesis of methanol from captured carbon dioxide and green hydrogen. This methanol is then converted into a drop-in synthetic fuel that is chemically identical to the high-octane gasoline found at American pumps today. The potential outcomes are staggering. Robert can pull up to a standard gas station in 2026, fill his tank with this e-fuel, and drive with a net-zero carbon footprint because the carbon emitted from his tailpipe was the same carbon captured during the fuel's production. This is the ultimate obsession for the American enthusiast because it offers the preservation of the mechanical soul. Mazda has leaned into this by announcing that their entire 2026 internal combustion lineup is officially certified for high-blend synthetic fuels. This move has caused a massive spike in interest for their newest inline-six engines. While other manufacturers are downsizing to 3-cylinder units or full electrification, Mazda is proving that displacement and cylinder count can coexist with a green future. The technical detail here is in the fuel injection system. In 2026, Mazda's SkyActiv-X technology has been evolved to handle the slightly different combustion characteristics of synthetic fuels, using ultra-high pressure sensors that adjust the ignition timing in real time. This isn't just a tweak, it's a total reimagining of the combustion process to be cleaner than many electric vehicles when you factor in the life cycle emissions of battery mining. This brings us to the second pillar of the 2026 Japanese obsession, the rise of the microhybrid. While the US government pushed for full EVs, Japanese brands like Suzuki, which has made a surprising comeback in the American consciousness through secondary market imports and partnership models, perfected the 48-volt mild hybrid system. This technology is now being integrated into every entry-level Toyota and Honda. It doesn't allow for long-distance electric driving, but it handles the heavy lifting of stop-and-go traffic, which is where the American commuter wastes the most money. Data from 2026 shows that these microhybrids are the secret weapon for the American working class. A case study of a delivery driver in Los Angeles named Mia shows that by switching to a 2026 Honda Civic with this 48-volt system, she reduced her weekly fuel expenditure by 25% without ever needing to find a charging station. This practical, no-nonsense approach to efficiency is exactly why Japanese brands are viewed with such reverence in the US. They solve the problem that exists today, rather than the problem that might be solved by a hypothetical future infrastructure. Furthermore, we have to examine the 2026 phenomenon of the digital resale premium. In the United States, a car is often the only thing a person owns that hasn't been bricked by a software update. However, as cars become more like computers on wheels, the fear of planned obsolescence has moved from smartphones to the garage. Japanese brands have countered this by moving toward modular hardware. In 2026, Lexus introduced the Evergreen Tech platform. Imagine if your car's infotainment processor and communication module were as easy to swap as a desktop computer's RAM. If a new 6G network launches in 2028, a Lexus owner in 2026 knows they can simply visit a dealership for a 30-minute hardware swap, rather than having their entire navigation system become obsolete. This modularity is a masterclass in building long-term trust. Historical trends in the US indicate that consumers are becoming wary of the subscription-based model of car ownership. Japanese brands have largely avoided the controversial move of charging monthly fees for hardware that is already installed in the car, like remote start or seat heaters. By rejecting the short-term greed of the subscription model, they have solidified an obsession that is based on the concept of true ownership. When an American buys a Toyota in 2026, they feel like they own the whole machine, not just the license to operate it. But let's look even closer at the manufacturing floor. In 2026, a new term has entered the lexicon of the American car buyer: Takumi automation. This is the blend of extreme robotic precision with the final oversight of a Japanese master craftsman. In the production of the 2026 Acura TLX, robots handle the heavy lifting and the hazardous painting, but the final engine assembly and the interior stitching are still inspected by a human being who has spent 20 years perfecting their craft. This human touch is something the American public can sense. When you close the door of a 2026 Japanese sedan, the sound, the specific thud, is engineered. It isn't just a byproduct of the latch. It is a designed acoustic experience that signals quality. This obsession with the sensory experience is why Japanese brands are winning the interior wars. While others are removing buttons to save costs, Japanese engineers are studying the haptic feedback of a volume knob. They have realized that in a world of smooth, cold glass screens, the American driver craves something tactile. The 2026 Nissan Ariya, for example, uses haptic touch buttons integrated into open-pore wood trim. It feels like a piece of high-end furniture rather than a piece of office equipment. As we move toward the final stages of this deep dive, we have to address the most controversial part of the 2026 landscape: the return of the Japanese small truck. For decades, the US government used the chicken tax and safety regulations to effectively ban the tiny, ultra-efficient trucks that dominate the rest of the world. But in 2026, a loophole involving domestic assembly and a new classification of adventure vehicles has allowed a legendary Japanese nameplate to return to US shores in a form that is currently selling out faster than any Ford F-150. What is this truck, and how did it manage to bypass 40 years of American protectionism? The answer involves a radical redesign that makes it the most versatile vehicle ever sold in North America. It's a truck that can fit in a compact parking spot, carry a ton of gravel and get 40 miles per gallon. And the obsession it has triggered is so intense that people are camping out in front of dealerships just to get on the waiting list. This is the vehicle that might finally end the reign of the oversized American pickup. To understand how they did it, we have to look at the secret of the modular bed. The next part of our story is about the vehicle that is literally rebuilding the American neighborhood. The vehicle currently dismantling the dominance of the full-sized American pickup is the 2026 Toyota Stout. For 40 years, the American truck market has been inflated by a combination of the chicken tax, a 25% tariff on light trucks imported into the United States, and a regulatory environment that favored larger, heavier vehicles. This created a gap in the market where the affordable, compact, and indestructible Japanese workhorse used to live. But in 2026, Toyota executed a masterstroke by utilizing its domestic manufacturing footprint in Alabama to produce a vehicle that bypasses these tariffs while meeting every modern American safety standard. This isn't just a smaller truck. It is a reimagining of what a utility vehicle should be in an era of urban density and rising costs. Imagine a homeowner named Tyler in 2026, living in a suburban neighborhood in North Carolina. Tyler doesn't need to tow a 10,000-pound horse trailer, nor does he want to navigate a massive dually through a narrow coffee shop drive-thru. He needs a vehicle that can handle a weekend trip to the hardware store, fit in his standard garage, and maintain a fuel economy rating that doesn't eat his entire monthly budget. The Stout represents a shift in the American obsession toward right-sized utility. The secret to its success, and the source of the current mania, is the modular bed system. Unlike traditional trucks where the bed is a fixed steel box, the 2026 Stout features a multi-configuration platform. Using a series of reinforced mounting points and integrated power rails, the bed can be transformed in minutes. Case studies from early 2026 adopters show users switching from a traditional open bed setup for hauling mulch to an enclosed, climate-controlled adventure module for camping, and then to a specialized rack system for professional landscaping tools. This modularity means the American consumer is no longer buying one specific type of truck. They are buying a Swiss Army knife on wheels. By offering a platform that evolves with the owner's life, Toyota has created a potential outcome where the vehicle remains useful for 20 years, perfectly aligning with the Japanese philosophy of long-term value. To understand the technical depth of this obsession, we have to look at the chassis engineering. The Stout isn't built on a traditional heavy ladder frame like the Tundra. Instead, it utilizes a reinforced version of the TNGA-K unibody platform. This allows for a lower center of gravity and a ride quality that mimics a refined crossover, yet it maintains a payload capacity that rivals many mid-sized trucks. Japanese engineers utilized high-tensile hot-stamped steel in the rear subframe to ensure that the unibody doesn't flex under heavy loads. For an American buyer who grew up thinking a truck had to be rough and bouncy to be tough, the Stout is a revelation. It proves that durability can be achieved through material science rather than just adding weight. Data from the first quarter of 2026 shows that the Stout has achieved the highest conquest rate of any vehicle in Toyota's history, with a significant percentage of buyers trading in aging domestic sedans and oversized SUVs. This is the death of the ego purchase and the birth of the utility purchase. The obsession is fueled by the vehicle's efficiency. By utilizing a 2.5-liter fifth-generation hybrid system, the Stout achieves over 40 miles per gallon in city driving. In the context of 2026 fuel prices and the push for lower emissions, this performance makes the traditional V8 pickup look like a relic of a bygone era. But the obsession goes even deeper into the details of the interior. Japanese designers looked at how Americans actually use their trucks as mobile offices. The 2026 Stout features a fold-flat passenger seat that doubles as a durable, anti-slip work surface, and a center console designed to house a full-sized laptop with integrated high-speed charging. There are even hidden storage compartments in the rear floorboards that are gasket-sealed and drainable, perfect for storing wet gear or ice. These are the small, thoughtful touches that create a sense of personal connection between the driver and the machine. It feels as if the vehicle was designed by people who understand the daily grind of the American worker. This leads us to the broader cultural impact of these brands in 2026. We are seeing the emergence of the neighborhood vehicle movement. As American suburbs become more congested, the desire for massive vehicles is being replaced by a respect for maneuverability and visibility. Brands like Honda and Nissan have followed Toyota's lead, introducing ultra-compact utility concepts that emphasize the ease of parking, and a 360-degree camera view that makes navigating tight spaces effortless. Historical trends show that once a convenience feature becomes standard in a Japanese brand, it quickly becomes a non-negotiable requirement for the American buyer. Consider the case study of the 2026 Nissan Frontier. While it remains a mid-size truck, Nissan has integrated a new feature called ProPilot Cargo. This system uses ultrasonic sensors in the bed to monitor the weight distribution of the load in real time. If the driver loads the truck unevenly, the vehicle provides haptic feedback through the steering wheel and adjusts the suspension damping to compensate. This level of active safety engineering is why the obsession remains so high. It's not just about the truck being reliable. It's about the truck actively helping the driver avoid mistakes. For a first-time truck owner in 2026, this technology provides a safety net that removes the intimidation factor of driving a utility vehicle. The financial data regarding these compact Japanese trucks is also significant. In 2026, lenders are offering specialized financing rates for vehicles with high projected resale values. Because the Stout and its competitors are expected to retain over 70% of their value after 3 years, the monthly payment on a lease or a loan is often lower than that of a much cheaper, less reliable vehicle. This is the math that the American public is starting to master. They are realizing that the sticker price is a distraction. What matters is the total cost of ownership over the life of the vehicle. Furthermore, we must look at the environmental side of the obsession. The 2026 Japanese small truck isn't just cleaner because it's a hybrid. It's cleaner because it's built with a circular economy mindset. Toyota has established a program where the modular bed components can be traded in or recycled as the owner's needs change. This reduces the overall carbon footprint of the vehicle's life cycle. For the environmentally conscious American buyer who still needs a truck for their lifestyle, this provides a guilt-free path to ownership. But as we reach the penultimate part of our masterclass, a final massive question remains. We have seen how these brands dominated the past with reliability, how they are capturing the present with right-sized utility, and how they are hedging their bets with synthetic fuels and modular tech. But there is one final frontier that will determine the next 50 years of the American obsession. It is a secret development in solid-state battery technology that is currently being kept under heavy guard in a facility in Shizuoka. Rumors suggest that this 2026 breakthrough will allow for a vehicle that can charge in less time than it takes to fill a gas tank, with a lifespan of over 500,000 miles. If this technology is deployed in 2027, it won't just be an obsession, it will be the end of the automotive market as we know it. But there is a catch that involves a global geopolitical struggle for the materials required to build these batteries. How is Japan securing its future? And what does it mean for the person sitting in a US dealership today? The final part of our story will reveal the ultimate endgame of the Japanese automotive empire. The obsession is about to go from a preference to a global necessity. If you think the current market is competitive, you haven't seen the battle for the solid-state future. To understand who wins, we have to look at the secret trade deals happening right now, far away from the showroom floor. To understand the ultimate endgame of the Japanese automotive empire in 2026, we have to look past the shiny exteriors and into the molecular structure of the energy that powers them. We are currently standing at the precipice of the most significant shift in transportation since the transition from horse to carriage. For decades, the primary critique of electric vehicles was that they were an imperfect substitute for the freedom of gasoline. They took too long to charge, their range was insufficient for the vast American landscape, and their batteries degraded over time. But in late 2025 and early 2026, the narrative was permanently altered when Toyota officially received production approval for the world's first mass-produced all-solid-state battery. Imagine a driver named Ethan in 2026, living in a rural part of Wyoming. For years, Ethan refused to even look at an electric vehicle. The idea of being stranded in a blizzard with a dead battery was a non-starter. But Ethan is now standing in a Lexus dealership, looking at a flagship sedan equipped with a sulfide-based solid-state electrolyte. This isn't a laboratory prototype. It is a machine built in a facility that produces 10 gigawatt-hours of capacity annually. This battery offers an energy density of 500 watt-hours per kilogram, more than double that of the lithium-ion batteries found in his neighbor's 2023 Tesla. For Ethan, the potential outcomes have shifted from fear to total confidence. He is looking at a vehicle that can travel over 700 miles on a single charge and, more importantly, can recover 80% of its range in just 10 minutes. That is roughly the same amount of time it takes to fill a gas tank and grab a cup of coffee. This technical breakthrough is the result of a massive, multi-decade collaboration between the Japanese government, Toyota, and the energy giant Idemitsu Kozen. While the rest of the world focused on refining liquid electrolytes, Japanese engineers obsessed over the sulfide route. Sulfide electrolytes are soft and adhesive, making them ideal for the high-volume manufacturing processes that Japanese brands have mastered over the last century. Historical trends show that Japan's greatest strength is not just invention, but the industrialization of the impossible. By solving the problem of cathode degradation through a partnership with Sumitomo Metal Mining, they have created a battery with a projected lifespan of over 15 years, maintaining 90% of its capacity even after 2,000 cycles. For the American consumer, this is the final piece of the reliability puzzle. The car isn't just reliable for the first owner. It is a durable asset for the second and third, effectively ending the era of the disposable electric car. But as we look at the geopolitical reality of 2026, we see that this obsession is being protected by a high-stakes trade shield. In February 2026, a landmark critical minerals pact was signed between the United States and Japan. This agreement was designed specifically to decouple the automotive supply chain from non-allied nations. It established border-adjusted price floors and coordinated stockpiling of rare earth elements like neodymium and lithium sulfide. This means that when Ethan buys his Lexus in Wyoming, he isn't just buying a car. He is participating in a closed-loop economic alliance that ensures parts and materials remain available regardless of global political instability. This level of economic security is a massive driver of the current obsession. The American buyer in 2026 is hyper-aware of supply chain fragility, and the Japan-US alliance provides a sense of continuity that domestic-only or offshore-heavy brands struggle to match. Consider the case study of Honda's 2026 Electron Volts hub in Ohio. While Honda initially scaled back some EV investments to focus on their highly profitable hybrids, they simultaneously completed a massive battery plant in Fayette County. This facility isn't just building batteries. It is integrating the entire supply chain from mineral processing to final assembly on American soil. By the middle of 2026, the data shows that Honda and Acura have achieved a level of vertical integration that allows them to offer high-performance electric SUVs at a price point that is competitive with traditional internal combustion engines. They didn't rush to market with unproven tech. They waited until they could build it at scale in America with the signature Japanese attention to detail. This brings us to the psychological lock that these brands have on the American public. In 2026, we are seeing the rise of the generational handoff. There is a specific trend where parents who bought their first Honda Accord in the 1990s are now purchasing the 2026 solid-state or hybrid models for their children. This isn't just about brand recognition. It is about a lived experience of total dependability. When a family has gone 30 years without a catastrophic mechanical failure across multiple Japanese vehicles, that trust becomes part of the family's financial identity. It becomes a tradition. Data from 2026 consumer sentiment surveys indicates that for the first time in history, the majority of American car buyers prioritize long-term durability over initial horsepower or screen size. The obsession has matured. It has moved from the excitement of the 1970s fuel sippers and the 1990s sports car icons to a rational, data-driven respect for engineering that respects the owner's time and money. The Japanese brand is no longer the alternative. It is the standard against which all other mobility solutions are measured. However, the 2026 landscape is also defined by the return of the enthusiast. As we discussed earlier, the development of synthetic fuels and the preservation of the manual transmission through software and hydrogen combustion has ensured that the soul of the car survives the transition to green energy. This is the ultimate victory for Japanese brands. They managed to satisfy the regulator, the environmentalist, the commuter, and the racer all at the same time. While European luxury brands are struggling with the loss of their mechanical identity and domestic brands are grappling with the high costs of their massive, heavy platforms, the Japanese triumvirate of Toyota, Honda, and Mazda has emerged as the clear winner of the 2020s. The obsession we see today in 2026 is the culmination of 50 years of staying the course. It is the result of Kaizen, the philosophy of continuous improvement, applied not just to a car, but to an entire corporate culture. When you look at the streets of any American city today, you aren't just seeing cars. You are seeing the results of a multi-billion-dollar bet on the idea that the consumer will always choose the machine that treats them with the most respect. But even as we conclude this deep dive masterclass, the world continues to move. As these solid-state batteries begin to flood the market, a new phenomenon is beginning to emerge. It is something we are calling the autonomous urban legacy. There are whispers of a secret project between Sony and Honda that goes beyond the Afeela prototype we saw years ago. They are working on a vehicle that doesn't just drive you. It integrates with your entire digital and physical life in a way that makes the smartphone look like a primitive tool. To see where this obsession goes next, we have to look at the intersection of Japanese robotics and American software. The story of the Japanese car in America is far from over. It is simply entering its most advanced chapter yet. The bond is no longer just between a driver and their car. It is between a culture and its future.